Hello, welcome to Bob's Dungeon. My name is Bob, I'll be your host. And in this video, we're going to be talking about one of the major pieces of technology in the Star Wars universe, and that is the hyperdrive. And the hyperdrive is a device installed in ships that allow them to travel faster than light from point A to point B. And the way it works exactly, if you're into it, is there's a place called Hyperspace. Hyperspace is kind of sort of like a different dimension. It mirrors our own. The hyperdrive is a device that pretty much opens up a rift into this other dimension known as hyperspace. It allows the vehicle, the spaceship, to slip in to hyperspace and travel from point A to point B. And time and space work differently in hyperspace. And which means you can travel much further in hyperspace in a lot shorter amount of time. And since it mirrors our own, if there's a planetoid or a star, those emit a gravity well that show up in hyperspace. And gravity wells can pull a ship out of hyperspace. It's a safety device they put in to the hyperdrive in order to keep you from smashing through a planet or into a star or other large bodies. And there are technologies to exploit that, but we'll get into that in a little bit. And throughout all the various iterations of game rules for the Star Wars role-playing game, the way hyperspace and hyperdrives work has been very consistent, meaning they've pretty much used the same system for it in every one of the role-playing games. And the way it works, rules-wise, is every ship is equipped with two hyperdrive units. There's the primary unit and the backup unit. The primary unit is the unit that you use when you're normally traveling, and it has a much lower number than your backup. Your backup usually has a much higher number, and it's used if something happens to the main. So, in hyperspace, it gives the amount of time that it takes to travel from point A to point B in the rules. It's got a handy chart for it. Now, it doesn't list everything, so you have to come up with some of these times on your own. But it gives you time for most of the main routes to most of the core planets that you're probably going to use. And you take your hyperdrive number and you multiply that time with your number, and it tells you how long you're going to be in hyperspace. So if your hyperspace number tells you that it's going to be a 3-day trip from one planet to another, and your hyperdrive is times 2, then it's going to take you 6 days to get there in hyperspace. If your hyperdrive's a times 4, it'll take you 4 times that, and so on and so forth. The Millennium Falcon is one of the fastest ships in the galaxy. It's got a hyperdrive of 0.5, so it's making the trip in half the time, which is pretty good. Now, your backup is usually going to have a number, usually ranking in most backup hyperdrives from 10 to 15. So if your primary fails and you have to switch over to your backup, usually you change the location of where you're going to go to whatever's the closest habited system so you can get repairs. Otherwise, you're going to be in hyperspace for months on end. And cinematically, when they use the hyperdrives in the movies and the TV shows, usually you have your dramatic lead up to them going into hyperspace. And as soon as they go into hyperspace, they cut to them coming out of hyperspace in their final destination, cutting out days or hours or however long it takes, because it's more cinematic that way. So we tend in our role playing games to do that, follow the cinematic approach, and the players enter hyperspace, and then instantaneously they're at their location. But it doesn't really work that way. Very cinematic. But there are bonuses to actually playing out a little bit of your hyperspace journeys instead of just cutting it out entirely. Because let's face it, in most situations, the players are living aboard their ships. Even when they're planet side, they don't go and stay in hotels. They normally sleep in their ships. Or at least that's what we've always done. So, aboard your ship is your home life. And you can take a really neat look and have some really neat role-playing opportunities if every now and again you take some time to play out some of the time in hyperspace. And there are lots of things you can do for this. You could have somebody stowed away aboard the ship, and during your hyperspace journey, your players have to find them. Maybe they're a saboteur, maybe they're escaping somebody, or something like that. Sometimes you can be physically brought out of hyperspace because, as I mentioned before, the hyperdrive is equipped so that it drops out if you come across a gravity well. The Empire employs ships that have these gravity well generators that they put in certain hyperdrive lanes, activate the gravity well, and any ship passing by will be pulled out of hyperspace. And then they can do what they want with that ship. And that can be jarring and can lead to some really nifty adventures. Sometimes pirates use these type of weapons, these gravity wells. And there are even, in some cases, gravity mines that put out gravity wells to drop ships out of hyperspace and cause lots of damage to them as they drop them out of hyperspace. And there's just lots of things you can do in that time that you're in hyperspace. Gives you some ample role-playing opportunities. So it shouldn't always be ignored. You should take advantage of it when you can. Otherwise, you're missing out. Anyway, this was just a quick look at one of the main pieces of technology used in the Star Wars movies, TV shows, and the role-playing games. And it has been very consistent throughout on how it functions and works. So thank you for joining me at a look at this piece of technology. And hopefully you'll join me next time where we'll talk about something else. Bye.